So, yeah, so basically, let's just start off with you talking about, you know, where you see the start of this story at Elan. So, take a second if you want to think about it. So I don't want to over prompt you and say, tell me
Right, right,
about
yeah.
train. Or,
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
yeah, just see
Mhm.
wherever you feel like it started. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna fall back over here.
Well, I feel like the story of Elon started with my mother and father's separation because my mother threw my father out of the house because he was an abusive alcoholic. I mean, a functional alcoholic all day long at work, but he drank all day long. He was a truck driver with 251, the union. And that's all he did was drink on the job. And he'd work 10, 12 hours a day and then drink a couple hours at the bar and come home and then verbally abuse my mother. So my mother got tired of it, kicked him out, and I said, just happened to say, well, who's dad gonna have? And I was crying at 12 years old, 11, 12 years old, and and I said, who's dad gonna have? And out the door my clothes went. She said, he can have you. And she really didn't want to do that, but she was so mad. But I ended up going with my father, and I was the only one that went with my father. And so my father would work all day, and I was under no supervision. And we lived in the heart of Irish gangster land in Smith Hill. I mean, it was like on every corner you had guys like Telling Asses and this one, and I don't want to mention names really and take that name out. But you had a lot of cats that were on that corner, and it was like I was. I'm trying to. I was enticed. I was look at how these guys live. They don't work. They hang around all day, and they got caddies and stuff like that. And that's how on being on the street and no supervision and not two parents. I would say that led to Elon and the crime I committed, which was federal grand larceny, because we stole freight off of freight cars, and that's railroad police, federal authorities, and so we ended up stealing 50 cases of Canadian Club whiskey, and we sold it. And then one of the kids that was with us, he got caught down there at the rail yard and was with me and my best friend, Kevin Leno. Uh, he got caught by the railroad police, and they started questioning him about the whiskey and this and that. He told them everything, where we sold it, the bar. And then one of the gangsters in the bar, and I'll give his name up because he ratted, Georgie Mello, he ratted on us, and one of our younger guys uh, told on us, and that's how we were brought in front of a federal grand jury at a young age, and we pleaded the fifth, and the federal judge was so furious that, like, they started, yeah, like, chastising my parents and Kevin's parents, saying, how do young kids know how to get on a stand without a lawyer and plead the fifth? How is this happening, Mrs. Kelly, Mrs. Lanu? How does this happen? And it was like chastising our mothers and fathers. And we went into the training school, juvenile detention center. And then within months, I was transferred out to, well, no, I got let out for a little while because like a month, and then that was the plan, to put me into a boarding school. State of Rhode Island, they sold the plan to my mother and father, and my mother and father bought it. And so, that they hit them with a bag of goods. It's a good boarding school. He's going to learn how to ride horses, ski, ride ski mobiles, and all this stuff. They sold my mother and father, and they bought it. They actually bought that bag of goods, and the state of Rhode Island sold them that bag of goods. And maybe the state of Rhode Island bought that bag of goods at first, because like I was like one of the first 5, 10 guys from Rhode Island, children from Rhode Island, that went to that place, and it was just a horrible place. It was like it was a nightmare in a nightmare. It was just a very weird and experience to go through for the 2 years I was there. And me and my brother were there, but they sent Kevin, now this is what I forgot to tell you, they sent Kevin to another boarding school because they didn't want us together. He went to a boarding school in Narragansett, Rhode Island, which was called Ocean Tides, and it was run by a Christian fellowship of Christian Brotherhood. And so Kevin was there and in Narragansett, but he got to go home. He got to go home every weekend. And you know, and the first time I escaped, it was a week after they gave me my first weekend pass home after I was there like 13 months. No, I was there 11 months, that's right. And I got my first weekend pass home, and I come back, and then I left a week later because I knew, because when I got home on my weekend pass, I had told my mother, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. It's not a good place. And my mother said, oh, no, you're going back. And then I escaped the first time. And while I was home on the pass, I seen Kevin. Kevin says, yeah, I come home every weekend. And that's what got me, when I went back, my mother sent me back. Then I escaped the next week, a successful escape out of there. And I got home, and my mother's getting progress reports that, I'm doing fantastic, showing leadership qualities and all these progress reports. And so when I escaped, my mother was like, got my father, got everybody, the church together, and took me right back, and she bought the bill of goods for about a couple months after that. And then she knew, and it was actually Kevin's mother that said, listen, that's not a good place for your son. It was Kevin's mother and my mother and and my aunt, because my aunt she said, what do you mean I can't go see my nephew? My Aunt Joan came up and seen me and my brother Dickie and said, nah, Marilyn, that's a weird place. And my mother's name was Marilyn. And finally, it was my mother that got me and my brother out of there. I mean, went to the state, went to family court, and said, no, that's not the right place for my sons and this and that. And they just let me and my brother out of there. They just let us out of there just like that. I guess they didn't want the controversy, you know what I mean? And the state of Rhode Island, and as long my mother was happy to get her 2 boys back, and everything was fine. But it was hard because the first couple of years home, I can remember, my mother, yelling, and all my brothers and sisters too, like going, you're not in that place no more. You're not in that place. Because I would act out like and react like I was in that place, Elan, and it was just a nightmare for 2 years for me. That's all it was. It was emotional, mental wreck. They try to put things in your head, brainwash you. Just not a nice place altogether. Just, if I talk about it, but like, that's what I'm trying to get at is what led me. It was just like, for a first crime, getting arrested, to be put in that place like that as a young child, a 14-year-old child, and to be put in a place like that, it was like a cult-like place. It was just, I was beaten, I was spanked, held down by residents and spanked by other residents with clipboards and black and blue from the waist down to my back of my knees. It's just physically violent, mentally torturing environment. And that was 24 hours a day unless you slept. Well, really 16 hours a day. And then there was times we were sleep deprived in there with the general meetings and up till 4 o'clock in the morning, in general meetings, and then having to get up at 7 for the regular day. It was a horrible place, Let's take a break.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we're recording now, so You on?
No.
All right.
Just making sure we're focused. Okay. We're good now.
All right, to get to Elan, you really didn't have to do much as a child. Skip school, smoke pot, and stuff like that, but you didn't have to do much. It just so happens I committed a juvenile crime, which I committed a crime as a juvenile, and my brother committed a crime as a juvenile. Not the same crime as me, because my brother came 6 months after me. And
I'm gonna stop you real quick.
yeah,
So, I don't want you to go. I want you to speak pretty generally. So, kind of just for right now, because we're getting into the details on our own about you. Like, we don't have to do that for this.
okay,
You get what I'm saying? So, we want to just speak generally. Like, it's fine that you said like I just so happened, but then you started to go too personal.
okay,
You know
yeah, yeah,
what I'm saying?
all right, yeah,
Just so people get a better sense of like, okay, this was the spectrum of people who are being sent there. You
yeah.
did a serious crime, smoking pot, skipping school, blah blah blah.
Yeah, but yes, all right, yeah, all right. I know what I'm going to say. God,
Yeah.
I'm ready. All right, so like really didn't have to do much to go there. Skip school, smoke pot. But however, committed a crime and I got there. Other people, they committed crimes too, like Connecticut kids, Illinois kids, and like there was kids from all over the country there, from different state agencies. And you really didn't have to do much to go there, but then there was people from institutions there. That there was people that were in catatonic states. There were people that were schizophrenic, and them people really had a hard time there. It was like, I remember I felt so bad for a lot of them, but yeah, there was different walks of life, crime, skipping school, smoking pot, just regular old family issues in the house of just misbehaving in a house. There were some stories like that too. I mean, but you didn't have to do much there. Did you turn it off?
No.
Oh, all right.
I'll always tell you if I turn it off.
All right.
But no, that's good. So that gives a pretty good sense of that. How who was being sent there.
Right, but like the thing is too is that they, like as we seen when we went up there, you know, they promoted that thing and how don't let you have to send your child here if you want to save your child, And back then we're just coming out of Woodstock and stuff like that, and smoking pot was like hippie stuff, and parents of the baby boom era, okay, were like frightened that their kids were going to end up like that, and so they bought that bag of goods from each state around the country. Elan was the place to send your kid, and it wasn't a place. It was like a cult. That's what it was like. It was like a cult there. It was, I mean, the first day I got there, when my father took me up and we got a tour of the house and went to a couple of groups, and I kept looking at my father like, nah, I ain't staying here. My father was going, don't worry, I know. And my father knew right then that wasn't the place. But my father was dragged off the property by the Maine State Police and sent home. And Paul Sherman, I remember him saying on an interview that his people were let off the property too. Just a similar type of story. His first day there, but it was, it wasn't, my memory to that place is really good, and because of the stuff I went through there. And it's like, like when you go back on it, it's, I don't realize how I survived it. I just guess I had that in me. And I survived it. A lot of people didn't survive it. I mean, yeah, I spent a lot of years in prison, and I'm home 12 years now, but, did that place have an effect on me? Sure did. Some of it was good because some of it was like the microcosm of business. See, I had to get something out of that, but all in all, I don't know. It was just a fucking nightmare. That's what it was, a fucking nightmare for 2 years.
So, that's all good. And you kind of gave me this idea, as you said you had 4 general meetings, and
Yeah.
if you want to explain, okay.
All right, did you know, all right, there was a lighter one, a house, it was called a house meeting. We were only confronted, you weren't rushed. So you graduate, like, because I got a house, like within the first day I had a house meeting.
Yeah.
I got a house meeting, and they were kind of easy on me in the house meeting, and then within a week I got a general meeting because I was bucking the place for a minute.
Yeah.
And then within 2 weeks it was my first escaped attempt, and I got caught like right away, 20 minutes later, because they send out the trackers and stuff like that. And but that was the first general meeting, and wow, what a nightmare that was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk about? I'm trying to think. The like. I'm trying to not have you like repeat some of the stuff that you had said last time, but I'm
Yeah,
hoping
yeah.
that's not something I can avoid. Because
You know what? Hand me that book right there.
this book?
Under there. Yeah, that's my journal. That's what I've been journaling. My memory of me and Dick. Yeah, I don't want to go there. Yeah, with the Rhode Island guys, I say it was unspoken loyalty. That's how we dealt with the madness.
Just double check that we're still recording, that red light's still on.
Yeah. The Rhode Island, I'm just looking at the notes, and that's how we dealt with the madness.
If you want to just read, like, that's totally fine, because then I can just use that audio. It doesn't have to be necessarily attached to a video. In fact, I can just turn this on and it can show you reading.
No, I put some down.
Yeah, I'll just turn this on, because I got plenty of time.
All right, yeah. Trust issues, yeah. Another thing they did was, see, I'm going through my notes, and right here I see trust issues created with family. They would create trust issues with family in certain types of groups you had. There was sensitivity groups, encounter groups, and primal screen therapy groups. And they would just drop these suggestions in your head. And these were like coordinated trainees running groups, residents running groups. And yeah, staff would, because there would be only one staff on the floor, and all the directors would be over in the trailer with Joe Ritchie and stuff like that. So there was one graduate staff member on the floor, and they would pop into the groups, because I didn't know how they did the groups. They would just come in the morning and at morning meeting and say, okay, there's 3 encounter groups, 3 primal screen therapy groups, and then you found out, or a sensitivity group, which was the easiest group to go to. and you would find out what kind of group you were doing that day. But then when I made it to coordinator trainee, I remember how they did it. They would just, all right, them two got a few issues. We'll put them two in a group. And then they just used to make up a group list and say, okay, this coordinator, you'll run this group, you'll run, another coordinator will run that group, another coordinator would run that group. And it was residents running groups and putting that, like trained professionals, like trying to put things in people's head and they don't even know what they're talking about. And like they're trying to sound like psychologists. And these are coordinated trainees. I did the same thing though. I did the same thing. I ran groups because I grew up the ladder. I came up the ladder. I learned how to go with the system. And then with the Rhode Island guys, when we did that and we got together and said, these people are full of shit. This is just a bad place and let's just play their game. And that's what we did, the Rhode Island guys. But then they got on us for that, you know what I mean? And that's when that's when I went back from my first escape. I made it to senior coordinator, and then it was time for the Rhode Island guys to lose the power of the house. We had all the Rhode Island guys were coordinators, full coordinators, and I was the senior coordinator. I ran the house. And but that's how it was. And then they just fucking smashed us in general meetings, like had us all up there, the Rhode Island coordinators, and that was one of my 4 general meetings, and they were for having the Rhode Island guys, they called it a negative contract. We had a negative contract, and we were just trying to look good, and they would shoot us down. Now we were on top, now we're on the bottom. And all the people we walked on for that, now they were walking on us. So it was like, they would pit resident against resident. And like I've seen a few interviews and I've seen some of the Last Stop, and yeah, a lot of that stuff is true. I don't care what decade you were in there, it was a hard place to be in. The physical stuff, the spankings, I would say that stopped sometime in 76, 77, the spanking stopped. The ring ran until the end. Unfortunate, yeah, but that's 40 years of nonsense, 40 years that place ran, or longer than that. No, it was 40 years, that's right, yeah, it was 40 years. But 40 years, 7 houses, you figure, on average, 500 guys up, 500 kids. I say guys all the time, but it's not guys, it's kids, it was kids. Being abused, how they explained it was organized child abuse. I mean, I've read some articles, and that's what it was, now that I see it. Like listening to one interview, were there good staff members? Yeah, one interview I heard, Janet Ramos, and the name rang true to me. She was a heavy girl, and she was a resident when I got there, became a staff member. She was just a nice person, a really good person. And I thought a couple of the directors there were, like Jeff Gottlieb, until I called him on his own shit. And Marty Krulik I thought was good, and Peter McCann, Marty Freeman. I thought they were pretty good cats. And but and the guy Peter McCann, he was a director. He took a shining to me. He kind of liked me because of, I guess part of the accent, part of the way I acted. He took a shining to me. And Peter McCann, I liked him at first, but he was a big guy, and which was an intimidating presence anyway, like Paul Sherman said. He was intimidating, but he was he really didn't abuse me. He did. He ran one of my general meetings, and he was tame with me, and it was compared to other general meetings. Like I didn't get a spanking, and I didn't go in the ring in this general meeting with Peter McCann. A lot of guys talk different about Peter McCann, but they were all, they I guess they had the right idea at first. It was for heroin addicts, and that place was basically meant for drug treatment. And that's what that concept was based on, was drug treatment, not to change mentally ill people and juvenile delinquents and try to rehabilitate them through substance abuse treatment. Yeah, I mean, really, that's what we call it today, substance abuse treatment. But that shouldn't have been for no 14-year-old kid. That's for sure. I mean,
It only makes, the only way that that place even makes sense as a treatment center is the fact that it's in the middle of nowhere, which is good for somebody with a drug problem.
yeah,